Evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a call to order to the facility of the Finance Committee. Today's February 8th. The time is now 6:30 p.m. In attendance, we've got committee member Mr. Michael Macarone, committee chair Joe Sokolovic. In person, we have Ms. McCarville for facilities. Online, we've got Ms. Marlene Siegel and Ms. Nadira Clark, and I don't see anybody else unless they're in the back. So the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes dated January 11th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
And I'll second that motion. Do we have any amendments to make to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion regarding costs associated with all outside organizations and programs, nonprofit or for-profit, providing services and programs in Bridgeport Public Schools. Ms. Siegel, I believe you're taking that away, correct?
Yes, I'm going to introduce the topic, and then there will be other presenters introduced. First, good evening to everyone. The topic is discussion regarding costs associated with all outside organizations and programs, nonprofit and for-profit, providing services, programs in Bridgeport Public Schools. The Grants Office has produced a multi-tabbed document, which I'm going to bring up on the screen in a moment. And Nadira Clark, the Director of Grants Development and Management, is here and will comment on the charts. Now, Nadira is also going to present on topic 4, which is the update on funds raised for Bridgeport schools, and there is an overlap between those two topics. In addition, related to these topics is the fees charged by the Facilities Department in accordance with the permit fee policy as approved by the Board of Education. To organizations that are subject to fees for the use of facilities. And so I have added into the chart, I've added into the document prepared by the Grants Office, the permits charts, so that we have all of the charts in one document on the screen. So with that introduction, I need one moment to bring the document onto the screen. All right. So it should take a moment to appear.
Yes, could you enlarge it, please, Ms. Siegel?
Yes, one moment.
A little bigger.
And so in this particular document, Nadira is going to discuss the first 3 tabs, which are labeled fiscal year 23 in progress, fiscal year 23 awarded, and fiscal year 23 denied. As indicated, I have added the charts pertaining to the permits, which were prepared by the Facilities Department. George Garcia, the director, could not be present this evening. Jamie McCarville, the financial management specialist, is present as you stated. So we're glad that both Nadira and Jamie are here this evening. So at this point, I'm going to ask Nadira to begin the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Marlene, I actually just recreated a little bit of my document, but we'll go with yours. It's a little bit easier for me to maneuver, but we'll go through the in progress. So the document that was presented is the culmination of all fundraising efforts on behalf of the district. The in progress proposals really just is all of the proposals that we would have submitted for the fiscal year. It's a little interesting because it starts with that item from Food and Nutrition. That is still on this in progress list because we're waiting to hear back from the Department of Agriculture as to if this award will be given to us. And those items, Marlene, if you're able to scroll down in rows 3 through.
Yes, I will scroll.
If you keep going, stop. And rows 3 through, it's a little bit higher. I think it's row maybe 19 are the culmination of actual, it's 17. We will be submitting that item for aquaculture probably tomorrow. So all of those grants that we are currently waiting on is a total of about, let me get my notes. That's currently about $5.9 million that we're waiting to hear on. The remaining items are also proposals that we either have in the hopper. We are very well aware of the RFP is either open or we're planning on it, and they're through the end of the end of February through basically the end of the fiscal year. There are some items towards the end. They are really at the end of the fiscal year because they are asked based on meetings with departments or schools where they have listed particular items, and we are constantly looking for those opportunities. The items up through row 29, I would say, are those that we are aware that there are RFPs that are open and we would have physical applications that can go through.
And now I did want to indicate, Nadira, that the IDA grants are the recurring annual grants.
Correct.
These are not new grants. These items pertain to the IDEA grant, to which I refer frequently at meetings as the federal fund source for mandated special education needs.
Correct. And this list, all of the lists that we've presented in terms of fundraising is an encompassment of the work of the grants department. So these are obviously entitlement grants, and we are consistently getting particular ones. When we go over to the other screen, we'll see, the SIG grants, et cetera. Those are coming from the state. We know that they're coming, but they are representative of work, and there is a dollar amount that goes with them. So they're on this list.
Did you want to move to the next tab?
Yes. So in total, I think on this tab, we have about 41 million in the in progress, if I'm not mistaken.
Scrolling.
There is a lot on here.
110 million.
This is the awarded tab, but we could talk about this.
Oh, and the in progress is about 41 million.
Yes. So in the awarded tab, this is a representation of items that you would have seen. Those of you who are paying attention to that lovely produced document, the financial condition report, that is telling us of all of the awards that are consistently in the district. It does represent for fiscal year 23. However, if you're paying attention to the numbers, there are some grants that go back a couple of years. So that financial condition report is about 200+ million. In fiscal year 23, we have raised roughly 110 in new or continuing, meaning, state grants that are Commissioners Network, things like that. As you will see, Roosevelt is listed at the bottom. We have received quite valiantly direct from the federal government, one school violence grant that was for about $375,000. We were awarded a competitive grant, even though it's something that's been around. And Mrs. Sokolovic, you'll remember this from a contracts committee meeting, the parent support for parents and pregnant and parenting teens, we're scrolling. So the school violence is row 60, and the parenting teens actually is right above that. Those are two new awards. Either they actually both were competitive. The SPPT one is a continuation of something that dropped off more than a couple of years ago. We've also received a couple of new private grants. We've had $15,000 from United Way for the literacy grant. We've had $35,000 from Lone Pine for math. And then we've just various initiatives that are coming through, monies for fame, different items like that. That's been really helpful in, pushing us towards our goal of continuing to raise money for various projects from the district. I believe there was 2 items that was in there twice. So the actual count for this is $96+ million. I noticed that when I was just doing my notes again, Marlene. But that is
Okay.
really when we go through the 200 million that is on the financial condition report. This 96+ million is representing, the current year and awards that we would have received. In the denied, I would say we're not doing too bad. There's, of all of the proposal we've submitted, I think it was 87 on the list. We've had 3 denials, something really early from Nellie Mae, who has given us in the past. We received an award from them during the pandemic. It's been really difficult to get continuing awards, but we keep trying. And then there was this school mental health grant that we just got a notice that was rejected. In looking at the other funded agencies, this was a State Department award. It looked like they gave the majority of those awards to really small districts, so we don't feel too bad that we didn't take that $120,000, although we had a really good project. But that's the culmination of how we're doing. We are, as per that in progress list, adding things consistently, seeking out conversations with different departments, people coming and saying we found this, or we're going to people and saying we found this, and trying to put in new applications so we can keep this number growing as much as possible. There's lots of things that we're trying to do in the district.
All right, very good. Now, thank you, Nadir. I wanted to also point out the permit tabs. So the first tab in purple is permits for the fiscal year 2022-23. This was prepared by the facilities department, and it is in the Board of Ed portal as one document. The document in the portal includes this tab as well as the second tab, which is a cumulative roster of all of the permits from 2021, January of 21, through the present day. And these tabs will show all of the organizations that are operating in the schools, including those for whom fees are charged and those for whom fees are waived in accordance with the policy. I just wanted to make a note about Lighthouse. So I'm sure the board members will remember that several years ago, there was an agreement reached between the board and the city, whereby Lighthouse would operate in school buildings and pay the board every year $75,000 as reimbursement for custodial services associated with the summer program and the use of custodial supplies in Lighthouse programs during the school year. And Lighthouse has consistently fulfilled that obligation and reimbursed the Board of Education $75,000. I'm going to ask Jamie if she'd like to make any comments about these charts prepared by the Facilities Department or add any additional comments.
The only thing I would add is I think George spoke to it last night at the facilities meeting. We're looking to take the permitting process and put it online to make it more efficient and be able to track it better.
Excellent. right. So at this point, Mr. Sokolovic, we've concluded the presentation. We're happy to take any questions.
And Mr. let the record reflect, Mr. Albert Benahan is now online and present in the meeting. Mr.
Thank you,
Macaron,
sir.
Mr. Macaron, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you, Joe.
Mr. Benahan, do you have any questions?
No, this question at this moment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I got a few. The person who actually referred these items is not here this evening. So I'm going to try to ask the questions that they may have asked. I mean, talking about fundraising, talking about grants and stuff like that. How much did we raise outside the grants, say in the foundation?
Oh, in the foundation, 1 second, I had that open. In the foundation for fiscal year 22, 23, excuse me. 1 second.
Take your time.
Excel obviously decided to close. All right, so fiscal year 23, we raised $315,000 for various programs. We also started collecting monies under a scholarship fund for Central. That was something they inquired about. Lots of our after school and summer coding program. We received a really sizable award from Fairfield County Community Foundation from their Business Collaborative Equity in Education program. We're planning on doing a really great program for the district surrounding high schools on that. So that'll be really nice. And also a sizable amount for SEL, about $128,000 for TALC under SEL.
Question, most of the times we raise money through the foundation, are they directed donations or towards the general fund?
They are mainly directed donations. As I indicated, something would have come from TALC for SEL, and that has been their bailiwick for the last couple of years. If they have funded us, it's usually been under that banner. Anything anybody has done general fund is a sort of broad term. Indirects is probably more where the district or the foundation might pay attention, and that could be defrayed for staffing costs and things like that. The foundation does take a relatively small or zero indirect cost, just because we're trying to make sure people who are hoping to donate, that all of the funds they give mainly go to those programs. But it's been just giving people another avenue to provide funds. They don't always want to, donate directly to the district. So the foundation is set up for them to be able to utilize that.
Now, this question is more for the public information, myself. Is it possible that we could try to raise money to cover through charitable contributions to cover our fiscal deficit? Is that a realistic option? And what are the dangers in relying on charity to keep our school system together?
Well, I can answer that question. In general, grant funding is intended for supplemental services. So it's doubtful that a private fund source or a federal or state fund source would be in existence to fund, for example, principal salaries or the salaries of teachers who are required as part of the core educational program based on enrollment and class size. So the answer to the question is no. You could not raise funds through grants to finance general operational expenses in a school district. Now, where there are services of the type I have described many times during these meetings that can be considered as supplemental, for example, bilingual program assistance, are positions that are needed to to meet the needs of our L students. So in one sense, they're mandated, but they're also a supplemental service. So, you know, as I've indicated, I can fund those services in Title I. But they are technically part of our essential services for students in order to meet the core educational requirements.
Thank you. And as far as outside of grant funds, like some, I guess you would call them a white knight in the business world. There's really no white knight on the horizon that can rescue us. It's like giving us a $50 million donation to the foundation, and it's going to say, "Here, save your schools." We're basically dependent upon the government to do their part to fund our schools.
Well, once again, I would anticipate that hypothetically, if a foundation or private donor existed who wanted to donate several $1 million to the district, I would expect that that donor would put certain restrictions on the funds. We can seek grant funding for technological projects, for curriculum renewal projects, for supplemental facilities projects that would be considered as providing service beyond the basic requirements of the core operational program.
Thank you. I'll pose my questions right now to recognize Mr. Benahan has his hand up. Mr. Benahan?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Ms. Narita Clark, please. Ms. Clark, you say about the foundation, they have $350,000, right? That's what you said?
That we received for fiscal year 23 so far.
Okay. Question, when they use the, what exactly they use that money for in, you say some programs. They have program here for Bridgeport School, and what kind of programs they are?
Yes, so they vary. Right now, the funds that we have are for either some scholarship funds. Actually, we have one for Fairchild Wheeler as well. We have money for SEL initiatives. We have money for high school programming. We have money for an after-school and year-long coding program that happens to be at Clater. We have money for a literacy clinic. We have money for instructional supplies at a particular school. We have an unrestricted grant for, it looks like one other school. And we have another unrestricted grant for another school as well.
And my
So
last question, yeah, thank you. And my last question, that's the foundation that they opened, correct me if I'm wrong, when the former superintendent, Aresta Johnson, was here?
It was reintroduced under Dr. Johnson. It started when Ms. Rabinowitz was here.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. No more questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Clark.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Right, and as we wrap up, as we get going in election season, any elected officials watching, this is a viable place to put your leftover fundraising dollars according to state law.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Sokolovic. Yeah, that is absolutely correct. We welcome all donations. It is a registered 501c3 entity, and we can take your donations, and that information is published. It's free and clear, and you get your letter confirming that we've received it and put into any particular fund that the donor has requested.
Absolutely. Okay, now back to my questions. We were talking about the building permit log and the costs. Now, I know we waive lighthouse fees, but I'm curious to know. Okay, I was looking at one here. I'm going to take it just for example, because it's close to the same amount of hours that Lighthouse used. 9245 Wakeman. Oh, they only use it in the field. That's a bad example of time. But I guess a field use would be less than a building use, or is it similar costs?
It's according to the policy has the cost in there. Penny Lee does most of the permitting for us.
Right, we probably better to look for a gym. The lacrosse gymnasium, here we go. They use the BMA gym. So this is, this title
So it's
is
usually
building
custodial fee
custodial total.
and security.
Okay, so a total for 10, 12, 1. 4 hours use, including security, is about $4,262.70, which was charged $92.92 for lacrosse. Now, my question is, if we were to possibly be able to revise policy and charge Lighthouse the standing rate, how much income could the Bridgeport Board of Education, the Bridgeport Public Schools derive from from those fundings? And the second question is leading into that $75,000. Apparently we're in a hole with that $75,000. But I doubt $75,000 is enough to cover all the custodial costs and security costs. And I would like to know what the differential is between the actual cost as if they were a private firm and the cost, the $75,000.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Marlene, there is a document showing some of that was prepared a while ago by facilities.
I'm just looking, I did include the Lighthouse report. Yeah, so we included, Mr. Sakalovic, in the Board of Ed portal, a document called the Lighthouse Report. I'm going to bring that up on the screen in a moment.
I would just like to add, though, that facilities does try to work with Lighthouse. So if we have a school where the custodians will be there in the summer, it wouldn't be extra, because the custodian would already be in the building, or security would already be in the building. So we try to work around the program for the students the best we can, especially in the summertime when the custodians are there.
Right. That's an interesting point, to work around the students, because I think 99% of these programs are for the students. But the only difference being is one's run by the city that runs our school at the lowest, second lowest amount. I gotta remember to say that nowadays, because we've improved a little bit in the entire state of Connecticut on a per pupil basis. So all of these programs, there might be one or two that's not for kids, like, I don't know which ones, but it will be few and far between, and it's not a youth program.
All right, so on this, I'm sorry, are you ready?
Yeah, yes, got it.
Okay, thank you. On the screen, at the bottom of the document, it indicates that Lighthouse is exempt from paying fees as per the permit policy, except for a Board of Ed city agreement whereby Lighthouse pays $75,000 per fiscal year for summer custodial fees and custodial supplies used during the school year. So the facilities department indicated in this bottom section for 21-22 and the current year 22-23, the invoices that were prepared in accordance with that policy and submitted to Lighthouse. I believe the school year custodial supply invoice has not yet been submitted, but will be, and we expect Lighthouse will pay that amount for a grand total of $75,000. $75,000 would include the summer custodial services, the summer custodial supplies, and the school year supplies. Now, in the top section, I'm going to scroll up to the top. The facilities department did an analysis of the various fees that would be charged strictly based upon the permit policy. And I'm just going to scroll down. I'm looking for a grand total. And it looks like room fees and custodial fees. So I believe, Jamie, we have to add columns E and F.
I
We-
can't
can you
see
make it?
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's-
I'm
it's kind of
sorry.
hard.
Let's scroll down. There should be, let's see. All right. So there, I think I'm at the bottom. Oh, here we are. So, let's see. Rooms occupied, custodial fees, custodial supplies total includes the summer. So I believe this is the grand total box, Jamie, is that correct?
I believe so. I can't
Right.
see.
Can you make
So-
it larger, Ms. Siegel? Can you-
Larger, yes, and then I just have a few comments because I want to be certain that this is interpreted correctly. So this is the grand total that the facilities department calculated strictly on the basis of applying the rooms used with the custodial services used and the fee schedule. However, Mr. Garcia did indicate that they schedule staff for Lighthouse services in a way that optimizes the use of staff during their regular schedules. So the actual cost factor is much lower.
Question, do we not do that with the other events?
I'm sorry, did you say with the other?
You said we
Users?
schedule around Lighthouse use, so we don't incur extra costs, but so like
Right,
Bridgeport Youth Lacrosse or a basketball, youth basketball team.
Well, I can't necessarily speak for the facilities department. I would think that it's a general rule. However, the difference between another type of event or group of events during the year and Lighthouse is that Lighthouse is operating in multiple sites continuously every month of the year. And so it's much simpler to schedule the staff assigned at each site in a way that optimizes the use of the staff to ensure the cleanliness of the spaces that are utilized.
Okay,
And
yeah, I'm sorry.
I believe Lighthouse ends earlier than other programs that might run later in the
Right.
school.
And another question, when did we sign this agreement with, I remember the agreement, but I think it's probably like 4 years past. At least-
I believe it possibly goes back at least 4 years. I'm thinking possibly 6.
Right, and so seeing as the purchasing department and everybody don't let us go past 3 years in a contract, that contract could probably be tossed aside at this point because
Wow.
we're facing an extreme fiscal cliff. Is there anything that you could think of that prohibits us from changing policy to remove that language or improve upon that language to increase revenues for Bridgeport Public Schools?
Well, I would make 2 comments. Number one, I think that in the upcoming negotiations with the city about the city share for the 23-24 Board of Education budget, I think in addition to presenting the board's position that the city should fund fully the non-discretionary costs that we have discussed in relation to the budget requests, the collective bargaining, health insurance, transportation, utilities, and the other cost factors. In addition to demonstrating that they should be funding the non-discretionary costs, I think that it would be advantageous to also mention that Lighthouse is using the buildings. We're very happy that Lighthouse is operating in our schools. They provide a very valuable service. If fees were charged, the actual cost factor would be over $550,000. But the agreement several years ago was to reimburse the board for $75,000. And so we have a very strong case for the city to increase substantially the city share for 23-24 upwards from the $2 million that has been allocated in the last 2 years. So I would consider the $2 million appropriation as a base upon which to build. So I would recommend mentioning this as a point for discussion. But but the second comment I would want to make is that I think it's still important to maintain goodwill with the city while we advocate for equitable and adequate funding.
Right. Yeah,
And
well,
I think that I'm sorry, just one more comment. I think that making that type of demand would cause ill will, and I think therefore that it should be incorporated into a general discussion. Whereby we're happy to continue the $75,000 reimbursement policy contingent upon receiving adequate funding in the city share. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I make my next comment, I'm going to recognize Chairperson Bobby Brown, Chairwoman Bobby Brown in the meeting, online remotely. And now I'm going to go back to the comment about ill will. If the way we've been treated and been having our relationship with Bridgeport, the city of Bridgeport, is a good relationship now that we can't spoil, we're like abuse victims, just sitting here taking it and saying, let's not upset them or they might hit us harder. I mean, it sounds like they got us cowering, because there are other after-school programs. As you know, Dr. Johnson tried to bring in Yale and the Lighthouse program for Yale University to service our kids because they wanted the Lighthouse there. And the Lighthouse received significant funds as well. The city, any money the city is charged, the city has the ability to borrow. The city has the ability to bond. The city has the ability, I think, to deficit spend. We have none of those abilities. We can only spend what we get, and what we don't spend, unlike the city, every single dollar we can't spend affects a child. And that's just, I don't need an answer to that, but can you please bring up, Ms. Brown, do you have any questions on this part? I know you've been here a while. It just took a while to recognize you. I apologize.
At the moment, I'm just getting caught up, so I don't want to interrupt the conversation, but if something comes up, I'll let you know, Mr. Chair.
All right, can we bring up the Friday night lights, please?
Could you repeat that, please? What would you like?
Friday night lights?
Friday night?
There's a Friday night lights part of the presentation. I don't think it's in this slide. Hold on, let me find it again.
I'm sorry, I don't know to what you're referring.
It's a night program that takes place at Bassick, Central, and Harding in the PMs. It's in the packet somewhere.
Is that through the Parks Department?
Yes. It's part of the news.
Yeah.
What page is it, Mr. Bennett?
Second page.
Second page of show the screen. Friday Night Live program.
Yeah, Tom.
No, there's another, yeah, there's not the one. There was one with costs broken down. It's a program 91, 98, 91, 99. But we also, we got a cost effects.
Oh, I see a reference here to Lighthouse Friday Night Live program.
Yeah.
That might be something different. Hold on, all right, bear with me. If somebody got a question, ask while I look into the packet. It says the packet is so large. Yeah, it's at the 3 high schools, but there's a page that we got costs broken down. And it's significant. It looks like, see, I don't want to come off the top of my head, but multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in costs or revenues. I just wanted to get that up if we could find it. don't know if it's in Europe.
In the last slide sheet.
Yeah, it's in one of the other, it's in one of the other slide packets, because these will be separate slideshows on his. Ours is just in a lump. It's Friday, I think it's Friday Night Lights. It's the night program for the teens.
What's in the package they sent it to us?
It's in the online package.
Marlon, it might be in the last document with the estimates if Lighthouse were to be charged per the permit policy.
Sorry, to the public, I don't have it ready. This packet is 93 pages long.
I think Marlene's highlighting it for you.
Right, that looks like it. Could you make it a little larger, please? That's 2,000. Okay, wait. That's just 2,000? Can you read off the numbers on those?
It was, I believe it's 5,200 for the room fees per room times 3 days. So it's for 3 days.
So that's for 3 days. That's not the total,
And the
what?
custodial fees are 2,000.
Right, and that's just for a couple of days? Is that for the whole year?
And that's the other one.
And we'll drop down. Rooms occupied. Rooms occupied over the summer.
Because we broke it up by summer and by,
Right, and that's just that program by itself.
right.
And what's the large number? I think it was 500 and change, so it's like closer to the bottom
For the entire,
for the entire.
yeah.
Are those fees paid or are those just costs incurred?
No, that would be if Lighthouse were charged
Right, so,
per the policy.
right, so that's above and beyond what the day Lighthouse program.
Yeah, that would
would
be
have
everything.
incurred,
That
so-
would be everything Lighthouse.
So now that's including the day rooms?
The
or-
summer, the morning, the
Okay.
evenings, yes,
Okay.
the weekends.
All right, so I may have misread that slide, because I thought that was separate and above from Lighthouse, because it was a separate it's run through the Lighthouse stuff Friday
The
night?
Friday, yeah, the 3 high schools.
Okay.
Yeah, on the left-hand side of that document, the report, it shows you which program it
Right.
is and how many days and
I can still think of better ideas for $500,000 rather than giving it back to the city. But that's just me. Okay, so I guess I have no more questions on this item here. Does anybody else have, Mr. Macaron? I have gone back to you in a few.
I don't have any questions, Mr. Sokolovic.
Thank you.
Okay,
Ms. Brown, anything else?
So just from the conversation that I was catching myself up on, I am interested to see, Ms. Siegel, how we can, in the spirit of goodwill, as you have mentioned, see how the city can, through discussion, see how the city can, occur this particular cost so that the Board of Education can move forward and not be in a financial deficit in any way when it comes to this particular outlet. But I would definitely be interested to see what that looks like, so that, we can have a better budget for the new year. whatever that process may be. But as you have mentioned, I do believe that Lighthouse is a good program, and I'm not speaking ill of the program at all. But just looking at the cost wise, I hear what Mr. Sokolovic is saying, but I would be interested to know, what would be the steps to a conversation like that, and and see how the Board of Ed can save on certain costs, if that makes sense.
Well, it would have to be part of the negotiations with the city about the city share. So I think if you want to raise this issue, you would have to raise it with the superintendent first.
Got it.
And she would, at your direction, have to raise it with the mayor and his team.
Got it. Okay.
And I would strongly suggest that if the topic is raised, that it be raised as part of the general discussion for an adequate increase in the city share, where $2 million is now considered by the board to be a base level from which we should be building, because $2 million is not adequate.
Got it. Okay. If I have any other questions, Mrs. Sokolovic, as I'm reading through some of the documents for clarity, I'll raise my hand. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else you have on these 1, 2, or 3?
No question this morning. Thank you.
Or 4? Update on plans. Okay, so I guess that exhausts this. And most of 5 and 6 we did yesterday. Presentation and discussion regarding facilities ARP and ESSER grants for 21-22 versus actual, and discussion regarding facilities 2023 by each school and specific projects for each school. We've had this.
I believe, Mr. Sokolovic, we have to cover topic 3, the utilities cost projections.
Oh, we did not cover that. Okay, yes. Can we have that? I'm sorry. Can we back up to that, please?
All right.
Can I get away early?
So we provided to the board the document on the screen. This is our projection workbook. And it is a projection workbook for the various utilities: water, sewer, electric, and gas. We show on this chart in this section the final 21-22 end of year close. So that would be the end of year close for the last fiscal year, 21-22. And then the projection for the current year. Let's remember that the current fiscal year, 22-23, is not yet over. And so we are continuing to project the expenditures for 22-23. And then we made our initial 23-24 projections based on the best information available at this time. Now, you will also notice in the list of utilities, I mentioned water, sewer, electric, and gas. We charge to the food and nutrition budget indirect cost, which includes personnel services such as custodial services for the cafeterias, and a portion of the administrative costs for managing the food and nutrition operation. And the total amount of the indirect cost that we charge is based on our indirect cost rate times the anticipated revenue. But that indirect cost includes as a factor a charge for electric services used in the cafeterias and gas services. So that is the explanation for this green section on this line for electric, and on this line for gas. So if you were looking at the operating budget today, you wouldn't see those charges because the charges are in the food and nutrition budget. We also have charges in the in various grants. So in the priority grant, we fund the rental fees for the classical studies annex. And along with the rental fees, we also paid for the utilities. We are responsible for the utilities. But the funding is from the priority grant, so we listed that separately in the grants section. And we also schedule in Alliance, ECS, funding for electric and for sewer. And then I mentioned the food and nutrition budget. Well, the food and nutrition budget funds the utilities used at the nutrition center directly. So we included those utilities as well. So in summary, if we look at this column represents the final costs for 21-22. And we had a grand total of about 7.2 million. Now, in this box, we summed the electric amounts, and then on the next line, I included the projected impact for the UI energy efficiency projects that are in operation, some of which began up to 2 to 3 years ago and have a return on investment that takes a few years. And so for 22-23 current year, we made our projections based on the best information that was available, and I've included in the notes the assumptions that were made at the time that we did this, which was several weeks ago. And so for 22-23, we're projecting about, here's the number, $8 million. And that would be an increase of about 800,000 if it materializes at that level, which is about 11.41% higher. Now, the electrical costs based on projections, and I want to keep emphasizing these are projections. Projections can be higher or lower. So the electrical total in this column would be about 6.1, which would be a 5% increase over the prior year if it materializes at that level end of year. And then we just took a deduction for the energy efficiency projects that we expect to yield savings, and the projected amount is around 40,000. So the net increase is 253,000 or 4.35%. Now, you can see in the notes, we were projecting for this year an increase in the water rate. At the time we did this, I was told by facilities that we were expecting an increase. I'm not sure what the current status is. We'll know more in the coming weeks. The sewer utility had an 8% increase pending. And in the electric, we increased it to account for the UI fees. And for gas, we anticipated the potential of a 50% growth. Now, for 23-24, for water, we included the possibility of an 8% increase, sewer 5%. I'm going to again emphasize these are projections. Hopefully it is a worst case scenario and the actual rates will be lower. Now on the electric, we're using the rates that Ken Flato in the city was able to negotiate, and basically the current rate was, the prior rate was 0.08 kilowatt hours, and that would go to 0.125 on January 1 of 24. Now he locked in the rate for the first, I believe it was the first 25% of the energy that's needed over the next, I believe it's a 2-year period. And he's waiting for the next cycle so that if rates decline, he can lock in, a lower rate for the balance of the energy that's needed. And then we included an 8% UI fee. And again, that's pending. That may not be the exact number. So scrolling down to the bottom, and I'm emphasizing once again, hopefully this is a worst case scenario. We would have a total cost of about 10.1 million. That would be an increase of $2 million over the prior year. However, by next year, we should have the impact of the additional UI energy efficiency projects. And so the net increase is projected at 1.7. So I'll just conclude by reiterating that hopefully this is a worst case scenario, and either due to lower rates and or lower usage, the actual factor may be lower. But I did build into the operating budget request approximately $1.7 million.
Questions, Mr. Macaron?
No, I think that was pretty clear. I understand that.
Ms. Brown?
No questions.
Mr. Benahan?
No question this morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, I just got a question. As far as the energy usage, have we ever done a comparison, like from when the building was empty, for instance, to make sure we're recouping our costs? Like, for instance, Harding pre-Friday night versus Harding post-Friday night, to see the difference in the BTUs and water usage gallons, to see if we're recouping all those costs?
I would have to ask Mike Zirkle. He keeps track of the usage, where I keep track of the expenses.
Yeah, if we could get like maybe a bill from a month where the building was in use and a similar month from the year before, and just compare the usage and have somebody calculate that out to just see if we are actually in the right ballpark with our numbers for the. Does that make sense to know?
No, we try to forecast for Marlene from past usage and expenses and the increases as well. A lot of our data right now is from when students were not in the building during COVID.
I forgot about that. That's going to definitely be skewed. You're right. So it would have to have something like.
But we do have.
2018. You guys still got utility bills from 2018 later.
We may.
Well, if it's possible and not too much labor intensive, it's just basically a curiosity right now. If it's like something that's easily accessible.
I can look into it.
Yeah, but if it's going to take man hours and put people off task like 2-3 hours or 4, I mean, some fingertips, fine. I definitely would like to see a comparison of that from the committees, but anywho, okay, so any further questions on this item? Now we can move on to, items 5 and 6, facilities ARP ESSER grant for 21-22 budget versus actual, and ARP ESSER grant for 22-23 by each school and specific for each school. I believe we went over a lot of this last night, but I believe there's some updated numbers from the last presentation.
Today we added, I think there were 2 more projects that we requested. We added about 34,000 to the total.
Jamie, I put up on the screen the two charts. I put them
Okay.
both into one workbook so that I could toggle between the two charts. And Jamie prepared these. So these are excellent documents which summarize the ESSER projects for facilities by expense category in this chart. And this chart is showing the projects by school. Now, we did give the facilities department across the ESSER grants a grand total allocation of $23,777,000. And that included a multitude of projects, HVAC renovation, asbestos abatement, boiler repairs, flooring, let's see what moving services for library abatement. So there's a range of services. And as of this morning, the balance is approximately $11.6 million.
Awesome.
About half.
Yep, yeah, that's what, we got a
Halfway there.
large report on most of this last night, and it's a little redundant. But, so what were the ones that were added? Do we have the updated that updated data in our packets?
I believe so. Marlene sent it to the super today.
So-
Yes, it should be in, these charts should be in the portal.
Okay, that's got the latest data.
Yep.
And
And
I just want to note in advance, I said the balance is about 11.6. You may see on this chart, for example, 13.5. I think that means that this was probably prepared at a different time.
Yeah.
This is, variable, meaning it's changing every day. Jamie is sending, me requests for allocations almost every day. So, please have some understanding of why the numbers on the different tabs may not exactly match. But we went over the numbers earlier today, and according to my records, the balance is about 11.6 as of this morning, which includes the orders most recently processed. All right. So, for example, on this chart, I see 12 million. Now, Jamie included the major projects. There were also transfers of charges for services and supplies that are allowable under the ESSER guidelines from the operating budget into ESSER. So, for example, if cleaning supplies of a certain type were ordered in the operating budget, Jamie identified those supplies. We determined they were ESSER eligible, and we're moving those charges in. So between last year and this year, I think the number is around $650,000. So that would also account for some variation since these charts show the major projects. But in this section on this chart, we were showing that the current balance is 11.6, inclusive of all these projects and the charges that were transferred.
Okay, since you mentioned it, moving ESSER allowable funds out of the operating budget into this, what happens when the ESSER funds runs out? Those costs go back into the operating costs, correct?
Well, the direct answer would be yes. However, we have to take into consideration that the ESSER funds have generally been used for supplemental services, services for which we didn't have funding previously.
Absolutely, yeah,
right?
I agree.
Right.
I agree. So more to the
we
point.
should have some long-term effects, not eternal, but certainly short-term. Meaning anywhere from 1 to 3 or possibly even 5 years after the end of ESSER funding. So that there should be long-term sustainable effects from many of these projects that could not be funded previously.
Absolutely.
For example,
Ms. Siegel, we understand all that. My point being
yes,
is that by transferring these funds from the operating into the ESSER, the operating budget is artificially low. And we actually would actually have to have a bigger ask if we weren't able to do that. I'm
Well,
referring to the fiscal cliff that's coming because we're gonna run out of ESSER funds.
right,
2025, we're not gonna be able to purchase bleach per se and charge it off to the ESSER funds because the ESSER funds will be gone, but we will still need to be buying a certain amount of bleach, and they will have to be paid for through the operating costs, which they're not currently being paid for. So that's gonna have a big impact on the operating costs when the ESSER funds are out.
I would agree with you in general. However, the cost factor would be, it would not be the absolute number. It would be a reduced number because the supplies that were purchased were related to the COVID pandemic.
Correct.
And
Yeah. And that's just one example. And any other cost that was shifted out of operating costs into the ESSER funds, that's no longer going to be happening, which is what's going to
Correct.
compound the fiscal cliff.
absolutely correct. Yes.
Thank you. And that's important to keep reminding the public is if the public doesn't see the pain, they're not going to understand when it comes. I mean, they're going to say, you didn't tell us this was coming. Can't kick the can. We got to start preparing now for that cliff. Start ringing the alarm bell as much as we can to get people to somehow understand that we're going to need some serious help or there's going to be some serious problems in our school systems. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. Any questions on this portion, Mr. Benahan? Did I already ask that? Ms. Brown? I was last, wasn't I? Okay, so, yeah, I apologize. I was last and I'm asking everybody else again. Okay, so now we're still on 5. Is there anything you feel that wasn't covered? You're aware of what was covered yesterday mostly, right?
Yes, I
Is there anything that you feel that may have been missed that needs to be brought to our attention?
No, I think George covered. We reviewed everything before last night's meeting as well, and he covered everything we've been working on and working towards with the ESSER funding.
Okay, if nobody else has questions for Ms. McCarville, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
Oh, sorry.
No worries. Motion carries. Everybody have a great night.
You too.
Get home safe, Bobby.
Thank you.
Take care,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night.
thank you.
Good night.
Good night,
God bless
Joe.
you all.
Good night,
All right,
everyone.
Mike, have a great night.